Hi YouTube, this is Natalie, the Plant Ninja. I am a wife, a mother, and an amateur gardener. I am currently located in Zone 8B in Central Texas. My goal of this channel is to share my gardening journey with you and to hopefully learn from you along the way. I do have some favorite channels that I already subscribe to. They have been really helpful and inspiring to me. I'll make sure I link those in the description box below. Also, this is my first video, so there's some birds out here and my dog's running around and there might be some extra noises, so bear with me. So my goal of this video is really to help you have more of a strategy in terms of what you're going to plant in your landscaping beds and how you're going to shape them. Obviously, we talked about those different components, but really it's mostly to help keep you from falling victim of the thing that we all do, which is we go to the nursery and then we just buy all the pretty things and we figure we'll find a place for them. And while we do, it doesn't necessarily lend to the most cohesive look in either your patio or your landscaping bed. And so hopefully this will help you plan so that you can get the overall look you are wanting to achieve in your yard. And so the first thing we'll be talking about is shape. And this is not an exhaustive list, but we're essentially talking about straight lines, as you can see here. We're also talking about more circular lines. And then last, we're also talking about curvilinear, which happens to be my personal favorite. And then now we're going to talk about border. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, but we're essentially talking about some form of masonry, like the brick you see in this picture. There's also stone options. There are landscape edging options that come in steel. There are also plastic options that are just a little bit more flexible. And then my personal favorite is a natural border where there really is no edge between the turf and the landscaping bed itself. Now we're going to talk about mulch. Essentially the function of mulch is really to improve moisture retention of the soil underneath it, regulate soil temp, and to control weeds. There are a lot of different options in terms of mulch out there, but we're going to break this down into organic and inorganic options. Organic options include things like leaves, tree bark, and pine needles, but most often we see wood chips that are often dyed, used as a form of organic mulch. One of the pros of using organic mulches is that they tend to break down and produce nutrients for the soil beneath them, which can feed your plants. One of the cons, though, is that it has to be replaced and it sometimes may even harbor pests. In terms of inorganic mulches, stones, crushed volcanic rock, and river rock are often used, but so is recycled materials like recycled rubber and recycled tires. The pro to this is they really don't have to be replaced if at all, though you just don't get that benefit of having breakdown of the material itself to feed your plants later. And the last thing we're going to talk about is really the plants. That is really the crowning glory of your landscaping bed, and this is really what takes sort of center stage. There's a lot to consider, and everybody's aesthetic is a bit different. And so, but what I really kind of want to talk about is just some very basic things to think about as you decide what you're going to put in your beds in terms of plants themselves. Really, I cannot stress enough, right plant for the right place. And specifically what I'm talking about is, if you have a plant that requires full sun, don't put it in a north facing area because it's not going to perform as well. If you have a plant that requires partial shade or burns easily in bright sun, you don't want to put it on the west side of your home where you're going to probably get a lot of bright afternoon sun. So really study that, figure out what area that you're trying to place these plants in terms of their sun needs. Also consider, in terms of aesthetics, consider seasonal interest. So, you don't want everything to be glorious in the summer and spring, and then come fall and winter, you've got nothing but some brown twigs sticking out of your landscaping bed. So find ways to sprinkle interest that'll keep your beds looking beautiful, or at least interesting, all year long through spring, summer, fall, and winter. Also consider height. Keeping everything the same height is kind of boring. I would say consider varying heights depending on what your aesthetics are. If you're trying to soften an angle of a building or a corner, you can typically use height to do that. But also depth, having everything right next to each other without having things behind or in front, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you add depth, that's another way to add interest. And consider varying texture and color. I love color and I love texture, but you're going to have to try to, I feel it works in a more balanced way if you sort of spread out the color. It's not all concentrated in one area, or everything is colorful, or everything is just foliage. Finding ways to spread out the color, spread out the foliage and the texture throughout the entire landscaping bed, I think is very helpful. And so I wanted to highlight a few things in my landscaping beds that I considered and may be helpful for you. As you can see here, I'm using some landscape rock, and I did that because I have a big downspout here, and it just wouldn't make sense for me to use something that was maybe lighter weight, like just regular wood chip mulch or something like that. That would probably float away. There's quite a bit of a slope here, and I'm not sure if that's something you can pick up on. So this is why I use the landscaping rock. This rock is unique because it's, I think it's like a 2 by 4 inch Sabine cobble. So large enough to also not be carried away, because some of the smaller pebbles and things like in volcanic rock can be very lightweight, and that may make it float away almost just as easily as the organic mulches. Okay, here you can see I have essentially got the curvilinear border with a natural edge. I am using this is a hardwood mulch from my local landscaper. And then I've got some seasonal interest here. This is actually this is an evergreen. This is a dwarf holly, Yopon holly. And then I've got cat's pajamas, catmint here. And then I've got some liriope, just sort of scattered. So lots of repetition to sort of keep it cohesive. I've got several of each of these plants sort of scattered in this bed, but not all the same thing, and sort of spaced out to give it a little bit of depth, height, and different texture. So here, similar border, natural edging, same mulch, but you can see I do have a downspout where I've had to actually lay some river rock to keep the mulch from washing away, and it, for the most part, it does it, but you can see that it still doesn't quite keep the mulch from washing away, and we've had a lot of rain, and so we've had a lot of standing water and things like that. But in terms of plants, I have at the very end a Nellie R. Stevens holly, a couple of Yopon hollies. I have a Texas sage, which survived this freeze, and I'm so happy about that. And then I have a double place spirea here. I have a dwarf nandina, and then a pyramidal boxwood there. And then you can kind of see I've got sort of the same plants replaying along the other side of the entryway here. All right, this is the south edge of my house. I have a Spartan juniper here, a couple of boxwoods, and then I have a loropetalum. These are so pretty in the spring. They've got these really beautiful, delicate pink flowers that come out. I do have 2 crepe myrtles, one here and the other here, and these were actually trees at one point, but they froze all the way down because of that, I don't know, snowmageddon we had in February. But they did throw up some shoots here. And so my hope is that I'll eventually get some height here so that I can just sort of soften the corners of the edges of the house. And if you're wondering what these like piles of rocks here, I'm not trying to start a monolith or anything. These are areas where my house just kind of drains when it rains, and it just sort of breaks down everything underneath. It's just lots of heavy water flow. So this is to kind of soften and direct the water more toward the beds. And so I've just got 2 areas like that here. And my hope is that eventually, you know, these plants will all be large enough to where you really won't notice that in the back, although I don't think it looks particularly terrible. So I hope you found that video helpful. If you did and would like to see more videos like it, would you please hit like and subscribe. My aim is to put out about 2 videos a month, though I wear many hats, and I hope I can keep true to that promise. But this is very much a creative outlet for me, so I certainly see myself trying to keep up with that schedule. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this, and like I said, I hope it was a help to you. Y'all take care.